Comfort zones are plush-lined coffins. When you stay in your plush-lined coffins, you die. This is going to be a chirpy episode, isn't it? So that's the doomsayer Stan Dale, who obviously didn't approve of sticking in your comfort zone. It's like death. There are less extreme quotes, but there are a heck of a lot of them in terms of getting out of your comfort zone is the right thing to do. And this episode is going to question that assumption. So, ready? Here we go. So I'm sat here with my favourite hat on, my favourite scarf, which is all soft. I've got a lovely cup of a newfound favourite, actually, matcha with oat milk. So a matcha latte. Nice. And I feel very comfortable. The temperature's about right. It's a bit rainy outside, which I quite like in a way when I'm doing inside things. It's kind of cozy. Yeah, we all know what it feels like when you feel comfortable. I'll take the hat off now. It's a bit too much. But I've actually just ordered that hat and it's the same make as one that I lost. And that one was the same as one I've had for years. And I will continue ordering from this same company as long as they exist because I know what I like. And that really does speak to the heart of this question about comfort zones. You probably know your comfort zone, and it's probably somewhere that you like existing in, isn't it? Otherwise, why is it called comfort zone? It would be discomfort zone, wouldn't it? But like I said, I'll just put my matcha down. There are a heap of quotations around and positivity memes and mantras and expert advice that suggest you really should be very careful about being in this comfort zone. It is a very stagnant place to be. What have we got here? If we're growing, we're always going to be out of our comfort zone. All growth starts at the end of your comfort zone. That was Tony Robbins, by the way. As you move outside of your comfort zone, what was once the unknown and frightening becomes your new normal. The hardest thing to do is leaving your comfort zone. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Yeah, that's quite a well-known one. The comfort zone is nothing else but a graveyard. Oh gosh, hang on, we're back to death again. The comfort zone is nothing else but a graveyard for your dreams and ideas. Well, this is all very, very doom and gloom. I get it to a certain extent. I'm sure you'll agree that it is quite a positive idea that we should always be evolving and questioning our habits and are we a bit stuck in a rut and all the rest of it. I'm absolutely not putting that up for debate here. That's a must. However, is there anything wrong with being in a comfort zone? Let me try and put this into a little story. I have two things which could be described as pushing myself out of my comfort zone and going back to my comfort zone, and see if you can spot if there's any problems involved in either of these. Number one is to do with a hobby that I took up a couple of years ago, which is quite unusual at my age, maybe, but more people are doing it, and that is climbing. So I was not sporty. I really didn't do much sort of physical risky stuff. I'm a bit of a wimp when it comes to heights. But anyway, this was a challenge. So I definitely was pushing myself out of my comfort zone. Yes, the most scary stuff I did up until that point and have done most of my life was performing. And for some people, that feels very risky, getting up on a stage in front of audiences, etc. But for me, that had become my comfort zone. Do you see how this works? So on a very different level, this sporty physical thing was a an experiment in a way, and I'm enjoying every moment of it. And it does involve constantly challenging yourself. Right. The second story is to do with something that I've gone back to. Now, can you spot a problem with this? For decades, I've been a performer. I haven't done so much of it recently because I've been discovering the climbing, and I've been sort of experimenting a bit with my coaching and my podcast and my writing and all those sort of things, but just living generally. And I'm very lucky because I am technically semi-retired. But I have now we're going to introduce a book here. What Gay Hendricks would describe as a zone of excellence when it comes to acting, performance work. And I'm going to come back to Gay Hendricks, the author of The Big Leap, in a moment. You might well have heard of his book, and it's very relevant to this episode about comfort zones, or as he would say, upper limits. Anyway, so I know that I'm good at acting, performing. I also know that I'm good at creating pieces, one-woman sort of shows, one-woman plays, and I've been taking them out on various community networks for a long, long time, including all sorts of clubs and care homes even, and WIs, Women's Institute. If you're listening to this from somewhere they don't have women's institutes, I digress. I have been on that speaker list for a couple of decades, and therefore I do get word of mouth, which means people will contact me and say, oh, can you come and be our speaker next year? So I had sort of retreated from doing the performance work stuff, not because I hated it, not because I felt there was anything wrong with it, but just because I wanted to explore the climbing, and that's taking up quite a lot of time, and do a bit more reading. And I just thought, I've done this for a long time. It doesn't have to define me. Let's just experiment a bit. But I get emails and phone calls asking me still, are you free? They don't come that often now because I'm not promoting myself out there, but they do come. And I recently had one of those, and it was for a piece that I hadn't even written yet because it was an idea I had last year. And I thought, well, I'll put that on the speakers list because I'd quite enjoy actually creating that piece. And sure enough, it's now booked in for next year. So I have to create the piece and do it. And I might only ever do it once, but I will enjoy the process. So I made a conscious decision to say yes to something that in many ways is me going back to a comfort zone, performance, something I know I'm good at. But I can't see a single thing wrong with that. I love doing it. I have no guilt that I am perhaps stopping myself from doing something else because let's just stick with what I know. Why should I feel guilty about that? If I didn't enjoy it, that would be another thing altogether, but that would just be nuts to go back and do it. But I did have a little period of time where I did question my bravery, if you like. Am I putting an upper limit on myself? Should I be going out and auditioning for bigger scale theatre projects? Should I be doing a different kind of theatre? Should I develop my coaching business more, really, really take it up, notch it up to 6 figures and all the rest of it? Am I just procrastinating with that because I'm going back to something like performance work in my comfort zone? But having taken some time to reflect and having listened to my gut reaction when I was asked to do this thing that I love, I thought, why am I fighting against that? It's not a bad comfort zone thing. It's a good comfort zone thing. Am I putting an upper limit on myself? Now, this is back to the book by Gay Hendricks. Okay, he thinks that we as humans, and he has a point, do tend to do a bit of self-sabotaging. You know, we do have a slight fear of success. We do tend to think, oh, no, that's not for me, because ultimately I'm not going to succeed in that. So I might as well stop it happening now before I get any further up this ladder, this journey. We do it with relationships, don't we? Oh, look, this is going really well. I better sabotage it because I'm not worthy of a good relationship. We do it in all sorts of small ways quite regularly, I guess. But that is just very human. And we do have to keep an eye on when we do that, and do we need to perhaps address it? And are there reasons why we're perhaps what he calls putting barriers on us, like deflecting praise, you know? So, oh, well, that's a sort of imposter syndrome thing almost, isn't it? Or worrying that if we get too successful, all our friends will abandon us, or that they'll think we're showing off. And that, of course, I can't argue with as being a barrier, because it's what I talk about when I talk about self-squashing, you know, a fear of being judged as a show-off if we express our full passion, personality, and power. So I get it. But what I don't accept wholeheartedly is that we have to go above what he describes as an artificially set upper limit. If you imagine a thermometer, you sort of have this set almost without you realizing it as a child, and you go up the thermometer a bit as you grow in sort of some skills and abundance and joy and love and all these things that you learn, and then you stop. You won't allow yourself to go into what he calls the zone of genius. So you have the zone of incompetence, which is where he says you should get other people to do things for you because it's just not your thing. I guess that would apply at work, maybe, I don't know, DIY. The zone of competence, well, that's where you can do stuff, but you don't want to just stick on that level. You need to improve those skills, which is fair enough. Then you're in the zone of excellence. And that is, I think, a nice place to be. There's no reason why you don't keep developing and evolving and growing as a human whilst in this, what he's referring to as a comfort zone, because it must be, because you're not pushing yourself above it into the zone of genius. But this is the weird thing. When he talks about how you discover your zone of genius, and I'll just look up his book here, he gives you various questions to ask. And the first one is, what do I most love to do? This is you reflecting in order to push yourself up above your upper limit that you've apparently set and into your zone of genius, which is where you will find most happiness, joy, and abundance. And I would just say that I was always a bit suspect when he talks about financial success, and there's a slight sort of corporate element to, I think, his approach. And he talks about a program for achieving happiness. And I don't really quite like that word program. That's just me. So I was a little bit cynical anyway. Everybody raves about this book, but when you look at reviews, there are plenty of people who also question it. So I always advise people to question the books that everybody raves about. There's some good stuff in here, but you just need to think about it from your point of view, not just blindly accept it. So if you are asking, what do I most love to do, in order to find this apparent zone of genius that you need to push out into, well, if I answered, well, I love performing and I love making people laugh and I really enjoy being there in real life with a bunch of people I've never met before. It's quite exciting. It's an adventure to go and find a new venue. I love dressing up. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh, I love that, but no, I better not stick with it because it's my zone of excellence. And the other questions he gets you to ask are, this is a sort of exercise he puts in the back of the book, which is good to do, you know, a bit of reflection. I'm at my best when I'm ... And then he says, dig down further. This is a bit like the 5 whys exercise, isn't it? You just keep digging. When I'm at my best, the exact thing I'm doing is ... So getting more specific. And then finally, you go deeper, he says, with this. When I'm doing that, the thing I love most about it is ... And he says, in there, you will find this nugget, which is what you need to be going towards to break through out of your, what I'm calling comfort zone, what you know as comfort zone. So all of that, I think, is worth a bit of thought, but always applying it to yourself, not going headlong with the assumption that it's bad to be in a comfort zone. It really does depend what that comfort zone is, what else you're doing in your life. But don't get this sort of paranoid feeling about it, because there's something beautiful about being all cozy and comfortable. It doesn't have to be dull, boring, and make you into a nobody, does it?